Hello, our truth warriors. Today I'm talking to a gentleman who is spearheading a campaign to bring about a better future and trying to educate people onto how to stand on their own true sovereign power. With 8 goals in mind, it's a pleasure to explore the possibilities with Pete Stone from the Sovereign Project. Hello, sir, and welcome to the Atlantic Underground podcast.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
It is good. Now, let's start off by giving an outline of the Sovereign Project and how you became involved with this.
Yeah, sure, no worries. I was basically minding my own business right up until about 2020. Okay. I was studying this stuff as like a hobby, just a sideline I'd do after work, that sort of stuff. I did dabble in politics in 2015 as a way of trying to warn people about the financial crash that was coming, So I did try that. And I also tried to expose the council tax fraud as well around that sort of time. So I had a go at that, but then I went back to my life. And what I was doing is I'm basically an engineer and I was actually developing my own supercar. So I was in the middle of doing that, got a little workshop and I was building my own supercar, which was supposed to be sold as a kit. And then you build it, something like an Ultima or that sort of thing, high quality, high end thing based on Audis, Audi V6s, V10s, that sort of stuff. So I was doing all that. And then, of course, 2020 happened. And I saw what was going on, and I can see that everyone was running around and panicking. And the lockdowns was one of the big things for me because everyone was saying, "Oh, you're being locked down." And I goes, "I'm not being locked down. I've not. There's no contract saying I've got a lock. I just carried on." So roads were empty, which was fantastic. So yeah, I just carried on. But then when they were rolling out a certain medical procedure, let's say, and people would be
Safe and effective one, of course.
yeah, the safe and effective. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to trust them. Yeah, with one of the side effects is in fact death, and it says it in the it's 9 pages of side effects. One of them's death. Okay, so they're trying to mandate people to get this.
Yeah.
And people were all over the world were panicking, going, "Oh, I've been mandated to take it." And I was going, "That's not how mandates work."
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to explain to people how mandates work and how contracts work, all this sort of stuff, because people didn't figure it out. I said, you cannot be mandated unless you agreed to the mandate in advance in a contract. You have to agree to it in advance. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I've seen all these people panicking, and it did get very serious. I think one of the things I noticed, or I spotted it in the news, which was pretty distressing, was people committing suicide over this. That's when I thought it's getting serious now. So I have to do something. So what I did is I set up a website called the Sovereign Project, and I just got to work writing down as much knowledge that I'd collected over the last 30 years about contracts, how the courts work, how warrants work, all this sort of stuff, what affidavits, how to protect your signature, all this sort of stuff. And I wrote it all out in these handouts, put it on the website. I then contacted a friend of mine, Mark Devlin, and we did a little podcast, and it took off quite well, actually. It did over like 50,000 views. And all I was going to do, I said, all I wanted to do is tell people, hey, there's a website, free stuff, download it, explains mandates, away you go. And then I just got so many emails coming in and people wanting to do podcasts. So I did more podcasts and it just exploded. And then what happened is I would attend the Stand in the Park movement. So back then, we'd all meet in parks all over the country. And I started talking to people. And one thing I noticed is that everyone got quiet and they stood in a circle, and it was like I'm there telling them about legal fictions, contracts, legal personas, promissory notes. And they go, what's all this? What's all? That led on to, we managed to get a pub because a group of people says, oh, do you mind doing a talk on this? I said, all right, then. So we've got a pub, we've got a room, and I did a PowerPoint presentation, got me notes, and I did a PowerPoint, and I did a presentation, and it blew the doors off the place. We had like 150 people spilling out of this pub. We had speakers and TVs in other rooms and a camera. And I'm doing these, I'm going off on one. And it just exploded. And that led on to me doing, we did what we called a trainer. So we had a day, I booked a venue We had over 100 people come down. I trained them up on this stuff, and they went off, and some of them set up their own workshops. Now we've got Sovereign Project workshops all over the world. I think we've got about 17, most of them operating in the UK jurisdiction. Some are in different countries.
Yeah.
We've got membership now nudging 20,000. I've got about at least 50 to 60 people working as part of my inner circle team now. Just to let you know what's going on now. It's exploded. So I've had to stop the supercar dream. That's come to an end. So I put my whole life on hold. And since 2020, I've been doing Sovereign Project 7 days a week for 4 years. I haven't stopped. I do speaking events. We've just had a Sovereign conference just about a few weeks ago, and we had over 200 people at that. The tickets sold out within 4 weeks. It was just, you know, and then we get emails saying, any tickets left? No, sorry, sold out. But now the thing I really enjoy, this is the thing I get out of it, is the people that joined early on and started to learn this. At the very beginning, they were panicking, going, oh my God, you know, WHO's doing this, the IMF's doing it, all this sort of stuff. They're panicking, what we're going to do, what we're going to do. That's because they were suffering with the slave mentality.
Yeah.
So once I helped them, and by the way, they had to put their own work into this, that, you know, all I can do is guide. They've got to put the work in. They got rid of that slave mentality and attained the sovereign mentality. And they're completely different people now. You don't want to mess with them now. And the stress goes away. The stress goes away.
When people have the ability to stand in their own power and empower themselves with real knowledge, it makes such a big difference. And that, you know, that can be applied to so many things. Understanding the medical system, understanding the financial system, understanding the legal system, and pretty much everything that tries to govern our lives. And I think that is the big thing. Now, I did notice as well that you have partnered up with a friend of mine, Clive the Carl. Yeah, I still use his products today. He's
so do I.
Really interested and knowledgeable man. How did you get to work alongside him?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I bumped into him a long time ago. And I was speaking at a freedom festival. This is one of my very early speaking gigs. And this was before 2020. And I was doing a talk. What was I doing a talk on? Can't even remember what it was about, to be honest with you. I think it was something to do with health and that sort of stuff. But anyway, I bumped into Carl and I watched his presentation, because he did a presentation on, you know, like vitamin D, that sort of stuff, and supplements, you know. And I was just getting into this as well myself, because I'd been studying cancer. And wow, what I discovered about that is, one thing is, cancer's your friend. It's trying to save you. So when you actually figure that out, and you end up, there's no such thing as a cure for cancer. What you got to do is you've got to find out what is causing it and get rid of that from your life. You know, so there's a cause, like get rid of the toxicity, and then the cancer will go away. But then you need to help your body with supplements, vitamin D, vitamin E, iodine, zinc, all this sort of stuff, so the body can help clear itself out. So I was learning all this stuff. So yeah, I met Clive then, and we got on well. Then I went to another event that was met him again, and we became friends. And then he asked me to speak at one of his events a few years ago. He stayed over. In fact, he was on that fold-out bed there, actually. My office is my third bedroom. So, but yeah, we just kicked it off and had a good time, and yeah, been in contact ever since. And now, yeah, I've got a page on my website with Clive the Carl supplements.
Well, next time you speak to him, I mean, you're a car guy, and I don't know whether he's told you that. Ask him to tell you the story about Jeremy Clarkson.
Oh, I think he mentioned that. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
and yeah, the powder involved is not as mixed ascorbate vitamin C. I can assure you that.
Yeah. Say no more.
Say no more, and that. We'll leave that as. About the 8 goals of the Sovereign Project.
Okay, there's many goals. Now, there is a page that we give an idea of what we're trying to achieve. And some of them are quite cryptic as well. You've got to read between the lines. All right. So obviously, end all wars. Now, one of the things about wars that people don't know is they are all corporate wars and bankers' wars. They're predetermined.
Yeah.
So the actual war itself, the official narrative is not the reason why countries go to war. And I think we need to touch on what a country is so people understand what's going on.
Yeah, but as well, we need people to understand that every time there's been a war, it was always a false flag event, the likes of the Reichstag event that triggered World War II, the likes of the Black Hand with the Franz Duke Ferdinand for World War One.
Yes.
Even one thing that I always tell people with obviously the Vietnam War, which was a big US war, that started off with something called the Gulf of Tonkin incident. And that Gulf of Tonkin incident triggered the war. But what most people don't realize is who the man was that told the big lie about being attacked and called it in. And he was the admiral in charge of the fleet in the Gulf of Tonkin. Do you know who that was?
No, don't know the name. Can't. No.
It was Admiral Morrison. Have a guess who his son was?
Oh, now there. No, go on. Not. No,
Jim,
go on.
Jim Morrison of the Doors.
Oh,
His
yes.
father was the admiral of the fleet that called in the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and it was a false flag.
Yes.
And it started the Vietnam War off for something that didn't happen. And this is how they get around it. They always start the wars off with a false flag, even to the point recently where we saw Israel being attacked by Hamas, where they supposedly just walk through the gates of probably the most heavily fortified city in the world and then started setting bombs off and driving into things. And there's no way in the world that could happen. The moment I saw it, I said, there's a false flag. Even to the degree of 9/11 that, brought out again more laws, more rules, the Patriot Act. We have terrorists from Saudi Arabia that supposedly hijacked the plane. They were being told what to do by a guy in Afghanistan in a cave. And then when it's all over, they invade Iraq. And it's like, okay.
I know. I go, what? This is what got me researching this stuff, you see. It's like one of the things was the 9/11 stuff. So I thought, I'm going to research this because I remember watching it live on TV. And I thought, this isn't right, especially when the buildings came down. Being an engineer, I thought, how do those buildings come down? But that's another subject. Then the 2008 financial crisis that we talked about before the podcast. I wanted to know all this because it was saying running out of credit and running out of money, and I'm going, what? How does that work? How can you what? So all these sort of things led me into learn more and more and more. So I got into it online and I was learning this stuff. But yeah, all wars are bankers' wars. Yeah. And they're predetermined. I mean, the main cause of Second World War, layman's terms, was basically Adolf Hitler was not going to pay back the Rothschild central banking system, and he was going to set up his own currency. That was really what was behind it.
And if people don't think that is a track record, take a look at what happened to Gaddafi in Libya. Yes. He decided he was going to bring out a gold-backed currency for the African.
Yep, absolutely. Same thing all over again. And you can research this. You can go and look it up.
That's it.
But yes, we've got to put an end to it.
We do. So let's get back to the 8 goals of sure. What the Sovereign Project are advising people to follow, and just those goals are.
Sure. One of them is we do it says something like that about the children. We say that regarding the children shall be protected. The sovereign fraternity shall protect the children. And where it comes to pedophilia, God forgives, the fraternity does not. Read between the lines on that one. Now, I can give you some more information regarding to what's going on. We all know about the pedophile rings and all the rest of it, right? But people don't understand it. People don't understand why the police don't do anything. Yeah. In fact, they appear to be covering it up and helping the pedophiles, right? And you go, what's going on? Why are they doing that? It doesn't make any sense. So I'll explain how it all works.
Jimmy Savile being the perfect example of cover-ups.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, there is a clue. Is Sir Jimmy Savile. He's knighted.
Yeah.
Right. Now, we have to try and understand how the system operates. The system works as a hierarchy of titles. And a knight is higher than a policeman. Policeman can't touch a knight. Okay. So whatever that knight does, policeman can't touch you. Police are quite low down on this pecking order, and they can only really deal with civilians and citizens, right? These are legal titles. This is how the system works. This is what you've got to learn. The police themselves have no authority whatsoever. In fact, they're privately run corporations, same as McDonald's, right? So a police officer has exactly the same authority as Ronald McDonald, all right? Same thing. They are exactly the same in every way, shape, or form. It's just a mindset that makes you believe they have authority. Now, one thing, let's just touch on another thing about authority so we can understand how this plays out. I can ask someone a question and I'll test them to see if they've got the right sovereign mindset. And I'll ask them, where does authority come from? If they say government, they've lost. That's the slave mentality. That's the slave mentality. A sovereign will say, from me. That's where authority comes from. Authority means author of. So it means I am author of my law. I speak, my word is law. I am the author of it. I have authority of it. That's where authority comes from. You have to be alive to have authority. So the police know this. So the police have to do a little dirty trick, and it's called legal entrapment. So what they'll do is they'll ask you a series of questions, and if you start answering these questions, you're entering into joinder. And they will apply a legal title to you. They cannot touch the living man, okay? That's slightly different to free man on the land, but the living man is the alive, the man. Can't, or woman. By the way, woman, when I say man, I'm talking about the species. Woman is man with womb. So, you know, any feminists watching, don't get upset. So policeman cannot touch the man, but he can deal with legal titles. So he'll get you with it as a driver. So he'll say to him, are you the driver of this vehicle? Driver is a legal title. Vehicle is a tool used in commerce. If you say yes, you've entered into joinder, and now he can pull you in and give you tickets, right? Now,
I think the worst thing that people don't get when a policeman pulls them over or arrests them, there's one word, and that word is understand.
yes,
And when they say you're being arrested, do you understand? And people say, yeah, that means they stand under the authority of that policeman.
correct,
Yeah.
correct, absolutely right. And the average person, this is why I say the average person doesn't know how to read, because they don't understand what the words actually mean, and they don't realize that words can change its meaning if you switch dictionaries and if you switch jurisdictions. So we can touch on Oxford English Dictionary, and of course you've got Black's Law Dictionary. There's many other dictionaries.
Yeah.
Now this is where it gets quite serious. We'll go back to the paedophile stuff again. This is where it gets pretty sick. And we can all have a laugh and a joke about general stuff, you know, but this is pretty twisted. The way it works is the police cannot touch you unless you accept a title. The police cannot touch a living baby or boy or girl. Can't do it. They can deal with children. Children happens to be a legal title. Now, in the legal system, the word child means chattel. All right. So chattel is like a farmer who owns cows, pigs, goats, and chickens. Well, he can do what he wants with them. So if he wants a steak, he can kill the cow. If he wants some eggs, he can just take them from the chickens, right? Chattel. So child, written in the all caps in their system, means chattel. And unfortunately, the average person doesn't know this. And this is, if we've got time, we'll touch in, I want to touch into state marriage as well, if we've got time, and licensing. Because I have to explain how this all works, and then you understand what's going on. So the birth certificate, let's touch on that. Registering. People don't understand what the word register means. So to register anything means you are handing over authority. You are handing over a title, okay? So when you give birth, a mum gives birth, she normally signs using her maiden name. Now, the reason she signs using her maiden name means she's unmarried and she's given birth outside of wedlock. And she's basically then abandoning the baby. By the way, all hospitals that are controlled by state or government are what is called foundling hospitals. So a foundling is a place where things are discarded, mainly babies and orphans and that sort of stuff, right? And by the way, they do tell you this, but the people don't understand, because think of the word ward, hospital ward. And you go, oh, hang on a minute. What happens when you find yourself in a ward? It means you've given up power of attorney, you have no authority. So it's like hospital ward, prison ward, voting ward, okay?
Ward of the state.
Ward of the state. There you go. They're telling you, they tell you this stuff, but the average person doesn't see it. So the mother, she becomes the informant. She signs this off. She unfortunately gives away the baby. Now, this is the good news. Technically, it isn't the living baby that's been given away. It's a title that's been created called child that has been given away and placed into trust. Okay, but that's all they need. These people who set this system up want you to think that the birth certificate is the baby. Okay, and it's, you know, and you grow up and it's you, but it isn't. Now, this is how social services operate and the police operate. They can deal with the legal title parent. Parent pay rent, the pair who pay rent, because you don't own the child. So if you accept the legal title parent and you admit that you have a child in their legal system, then that means the police can then take them. All right, then you've got a child. They're owned by the state. Now, this is the insidious bit. Because these children are considered chattel and owned by the state, that means everyone who has a high enough title can do whatever they want, just like if there were pigs, goats, and all the rest of it. And in their minds, they're twisted. The people who run this system are satanic and twisted, but in their minds, they think they're doing nothing wrong because the mother gave the baby away. So that's the consent. Because the way they work it, their system is based on consent, not necessarily informed consent. So if you do something and you don't speak out and you acquiesce, then that's a form of tacit agreement. Therefore, you've consented. And if you didn't understand what you were doing, then that's your fault. You know, you're stupid, right? That's what they believe. So they think as long as you registered that baby, it's fair game. And that is why these pedophiles, the rings, aren't doing anything illegal. So let's touch on the difference between illegal and lawful, right? Because people don't know the difference. So law is beyond man's grasp. Okay, so that's how you know what a law is. You cannot change it. So in other words, you can say it's from God if you're religious, not a problem. But a law is something you cannot change. You cannot suddenly say murder is okay and it's okay to steal. Can't do that. It's beyond your reach. So that's how a law actually works. The government and parliament and the police on all these corporate entities only deal in legal. Legal basically means contract. That's what it means. Yeah. So if you are told you've done something illegal, that means you violated something within a policy, within a contract. And then you should say, well, hang on a minute, where's the contract? Where's my signature? You know, how you know, I have to be obligated with the legalities of the contract first to do something illegal. Okay. So the average person out there is running around. This is why they don't know how to read and they're brainwashed going, well, you can't do that. It's illegal. Now, because, by the way, legal actually means undoing God's law. So if you research it, that's actually what it means. So because it's legal and because it's a contract and because the mother registered the child, the pedophiles are doing nothing wrong in the eyes of the police, because the police are policy enforcers. That's what their name is. Policy, police, that's what they're called. So they will enforce the policy that you've agreed to. So this is why the police will come and take your children and all the rest of it. And you'll go, what's going on? We've even seen it where mothers have given birth in hospital, literally hours old. And you've got policemen around the mother's bed taking the child. I mean, this is getting out of hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you see people getting angry with the likes of politicians and presidents and prime ministers, but wish that people could see beyond these puppets and look more at the puppet masters like the central banks themselves?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Now, here's the thing that most people don't realize is that governments actually operate at a very low level. Okay, there's three basic jurisdictions that people have got to understand. The highest jurisdiction there is the first one, the highest one, number one jurisdiction is called the private. And that is your private jurisdiction. That's your private dominion, your private word, your law. It's yours. It's yours. It's your house. It's your dominion. Okay. And if we have time, we'll get into the fact that most men don't even realize they've got a dominion and a jurisdiction and a court of themselves. So if we've got time, we'll cover that. And people have got to get back to it. We've got to get the men back. All right. Because men have got to return. All right. Stop watching the football and drinking the beer and all the rest of the stupid nonsense. Football's fine. You've got to be men now. Get back. Get your house back. Get your dominion back. Your word is law. And you've got to start protecting these women and children. All right. It's the men who do that. So if we've got time, we'll get into that. But so going back to the jurisdiction sort of stuff and the dominion stuff. So private, that's the highest jurisdiction there is. Okay. That's your private dominion. Then you've got the second jurisdiction within this hierarchy. And try and think of it as a pyramid. And at the top pyramid is your private jurisdiction. And then you've got the all-seeing eye. Now, the all-seeing eye represents the Illuminati, the Crown Council of the 13, the people who know how run the system. They can look into jurisdiction 2 and 3. Okay, they can't look into your private one. They can't see into that. The second jurisdiction is what is referred to as national. This is where mega corporations operate, which is like the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, all these big corporations. Mega corporations operate at the national level, and they actually operate above governments. Then you've got the third jurisdiction, all right? This is where governments operate, and they operate within country corporate jurisdictions. A country is just a corporate jurisdiction. It's got nothing to do with the land in any way, shape, or form. It's just a jurisdiction. That's all it is, and it's a corporate jurisdiction. So within this jurisdiction, the third jurisdiction, we have politics. And this is where you'll find so-called world leaders and, you know, I won't mention any names, but, you know, it's always red versus blue or blue versus red.
Yeah.
It's a soap opera. Okay. And they play their game and people think they've got a voice because they vote. And by the way, I think we mentioned it earlier. You vote within a ward. Your vote is worthless. It's an opinion. You go to an opinion poll. When you do your voting form, you literally, you don't even use your name. You use your surname. Surname is surety name. And they control that name. It's not yours. And they get you to sign with an X, which is the sign or the signature of a simpleton. So you fill a form out and you're basically saying, I don't know who to vote for. Can you choose for me?
And that's it. You know, we know that they are previously selected, they're not elected. But unfortunately, they have to create the illusion that people have freedom of choice in regards to this. Because I think if people realize that they don't have freedom of choice under this system, that it would cause messing around. I mean, even the government itself, the whole reason, as far as I can ascertain, that a government was put into place was to stop the people with the pitchforks getting to the royal families and the monarchy, the real people that do own the land and do lead. And they put a government in place not only to appease the people and make it look like they have freedom of choice, but just to become that barrier between the ultra elite and the people. And this is what I was saying before. If people could just see past prime ministers, politicians, presidents around the world and know exactly what they are and the real purpose of why they're there, then they could actually go beyond that and start tackling the real problem, which is the very people who have, for generations, through bloodlines and through being allowed to do this, have ruled over us. And that is what people really need to wake up to, because this is not something you can dismantle from the lower rungs to the top rungs. We have to dismantle this from the top down, because these barriers, like governments, are deliberately put in place to stop people getting to the very people who are in control of everything around us in this world.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's the game. Now, the game, this is where most people fail, and I call it a game to try and make light of the situation, although it's got some dark passages and all the rest of it, but I call it a game. The problem with most people is they've got the wrong mindset and they've got the slave mentality and they're operating as a piece on the board. And that's where they're going wrong. They're trying to go, oh, I'm going to join a political party and I'm going to change the world and all this. And no, 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 no. What you've got to do is you've got to get the right mindset and you've got to become sovereign and you become the player. Then you look down at the board and then you see the pieces and then you look at all these so-called world leaders and all the rest of it and you're down on them. That's the position you've got to be at. And then when you get that mindset, now you can deal with them because you treat them because they're lower than you. When you realize that government is in fact just a legal fiction corporation with no authority, but they told you this in the film Wizard of Oz. Yeah. So almost 100 years ago, that's what the end scene is all about. Yeah. Pull back the curtain. Who's the guy pulling the levers?
And follow the yellow brick road. And people don't realize that the yellow brick is gold.
Correct. Wizard of Oz. Yeah. So, and I think Dorothy originally in the book had silver shoes rather than ruby shoes, and silver was also supposed to be a monetary thing. But yeah, it's all in there. Straw Man, Scarecrow, Tin Man, yeah, tax identity number, the Cowardly Lion, that's supposed to represent the cowardly government officials getting a title so they feel all big. So yeah, it's all there. But when you understand the game, you've got to study it. You've got to say, oh, I can play the game now. I know what's going on. When you realize that countries are just corporate jurisdictions and they only apply to legal titles, you can play the game. So what you can do is you take control of your life, you become sovereign, and you start using your paperwork. Do not use forms. People, this is the thing. People make the mistake of trying to use the legal system to gain their freedom or get a laudable title. And I'm going, or get their rights. And I go, you've lost the game. If you're quoting a constitution and you think you're getting your rights from a constitution, you've lost. That's one of the traps because you didn't write that constitution. Someone else did. And if you're quoting that constitution, then the person who did write it, they control you because you're quoting their constitution. Constitutions operate in PMAs, private members association. Gives you a clue. So you've joined the PMA and you don't even know it. So people have got to stand their own ground, use their own paperwork, use their seal. By the way, men have got to get back to claiming their house, which is not just house, actually means family. It's an old German word. I think it's Hussan, and it means family, because the man has first title of his family, right? And in his house, his word is law. No one is above him. And because of that, because he's a man, he's a provider and a protector. And the protector is the key thing here. He is the protector. And the reason why a woman takes his last name, family name, in marriage is to say that woman is now protected on using my authority, my name. Do not touch that woman. And then, of course, children as well. Do not touch those children. Now, if we have got time, I think we could touch in state marriage because people don't understand what marriage is. Yeah. Because this is where it's all going wrong. This is where people are collapsing and they don't really realize what's going on. When I talk about marriage, I'm talking about a true marriage between a living man and a living woman. Okay, that can only be done through affidavit. It's called an affidavit of marriage. Okay, that's the only way you can do it, and then it will be placed in the family Bible. That is a true marriage, and the woman will take the family name, which will be the man's last name, not the surname. As I mentioned earlier, surname in surety name means you're the debtor, and you do not control that surname, and you do not control your forenames. The forenames in the surname are owned by the Vatican and the central bank of your particular country. They have a slice of the pie and they get tax payments from those names. They're not your names. They are owned by someone else. So what's actually going on with a state marriage? This is, people got to wake up to this. One of the clues that something is not right is that you require a marriage license. And you go, well, hang on a minute. What does license mean? License means asking permission. And you go, well, hang on a minute. Who am I exactly asking me permission from? Because I've already asked the woman and she said yes. So who am I asking? And why am I asking a state, which is a corporation? Why am I getting permission from basically a country or a government to get married? Well, because you're not getting married. You're actually entering into a corporate merger. So this is where it gets dangerous. So what's actually going on is that the man, he has a birth certificate. That is a corporation set up from birth. Okay, it's not his. It was issued to him. So, let's just touch on this very quickly. If you are issued something, you don't own it. The issuer owns it, and they have authority over it. So if you're issued with a passport, it's not yours. If you're issued with a driver's license, not yours. If you're issued with a birth certificate, not yours, right? Certificate means copy of from a higher authority. So it's not yours. So if you receive a certificate, it's not yours, someone else's. They've got a higher authority. They're certifying you. That means they are in a higher position than you. So certificates, very dangerous. So licensing, it means asking permission. So you're asking permission from your particular country, let's say the UK corporation. So you're asking the UK corporation to do a corporate merger between your birth certificate, legal persona corporation, and your to-be wife's birth certificate. And there's a merger going on. It is a three-way merger. So the two corporations have merged, a corporate merger, and it has got a controlling interest, and the controlling interest is the government. The government has control over this marriage, right? I mean, you can test this, because guess what? If you want a divorce, who do you turn to? The government. And you've got to follow the government's rules, don't you? Yeah, because they control the relationship. They control the merger. Yeah. But this is where it gets dangerous. Because what's happened is, because the marrying couple, the man and the woman, didn't realize what was going on, the man has given up his ability to protect his woman and to protect his children. Remember what children means? Chattel. So he's been severed. They're separated now. He can't protect his wife.
What's also quite funny as well, I love the way things pop up as we're chatting. Like, if you want to be married, you have to ask permission. Then the church does the paperwork for you, and you sign the register of marriage. But going back, if you wish to have a child, and obviously register the birth certificate, many years, centuries ago, even to have a child, you had to ask permission to have a child. And what people don't realize is the word fuck is actually fornication under consent of king. And that's where that word came from, because you had to ask permission to have children at that point in time. And it's funny how that word, for most people, they don't even understand the meaning of it when it's used, in relation to having children. And it's a great word. I use it quite a lot anyway. Usually on a lot of people that don't understand what I'm saying. But yeah, that's where that word came from.
But you're right. I mean, if you go back in history, you got to understand, back then they had the feudal system, which still operates today. But back then it was referring to people and subjects, and the modern day version is citizens and persons. So here's the thing about the word people. You've got to be careful of this word. If you're using the word people within the legal system, again, that means chattel. It means humans living on the land but don't own the land. Therefore, the landowner owns the people. So when the king is addressing his people and it says, my people, he's literally saying, I own you. And that is the reason why you had to ask permission to have children on the king's land. That's, so yeah, you've got to be careful of people.
And I think what people don't realize as well, and we're going to scare the living daylights out of most people in England and Canada right now, because you may have a mortgage on your house. You may even paid your house off. But the land underneath it, you do not own, because that is still crown land, and the same applies to Canada as well. And unless you can obtain an alloidal title that says you own the land, all you own is the bricks and mortar that is sitting on that land, and that is what you paid a fortune for. You do not own the land, and regardless of them having a leasehold on these anyway for maybe 100 years, regardless of that, when the ship goes down, and if we head into another financial instability period and we see financial systems going down again, Mr. Klaus Schwab, who lovingly said you will own nothing and be happy, is quite right, because under the fact that we do not own nothing, I'm thinking, how's he going to achieve this? But when people realize that they can come and take your land at any time and anything that is on their land also becomes theirs. That means that owning nothing and being, well, they say being happy, but owning nothing is a very, very happening reality for the future agenda of where they want to take these ridiculous legislations, rules, and laws. And people really need to start becoming sovereign and understanding what power they have, because the fight that they will have in the future is, it might be pitchforks on the street and whatever, but the fight that they will have in the future is having the knowledge of being able to stand in their power and telling these people, well, to fuck off, I suppose.
Good use of that word. Now, I'm actually going to give you a little bit more information on this land stuff that might cheer you up. And then you might actually see a certain remedy. Because, they turn around and they say they own the land. No, they don't.
They don't?
They're bluffing. No. Now, you've got to keep digging. This is how they've done it. But you got to, this is good. Here's how it works. I'm going to have to go back in time. So let's say you got your king, and back then, a lot of people believed in God. Just about everybody did, believed in God. It was religion and all the rest of it. I'm not saying you don't have, I'm not dissing anybody today. If they want to believe in God, that's their choice. But you've got to understand, back then, God was basically the law, and everyone believed in God, including the king.
Yeah.
Now, the king knew that God had given man dominion of the planet, okay, which meant every man had the right to stake his claim and say, that piece of the planet, 10 acres or so, is mine. And every man has the right to do that. The king knew this. Now, the king knew he could not go against God and he could not go against man. Can't do that. He can, however, create legal jurisdictions, and he can create legal titles such as subject. All right. So what he did is he created what is called a survey. A survey, basically all he does is he looks around and he says, all I can see, fantastic. He looks around at the land and the trees and the mountains, right? And what he does is he puts it down onto paper. He writes it down in a contract that creates a survey. It's become a two-dimensional contract. So what that means is that he can now trick people to enter into that jurisdiction if they accept the legal title, people or subject. And if you fall for it, then you think the king owns the land. He doesn't. He owns a survey, a two-dimensional document. It's always been that case. So fast forward to today, because it's all corporate now. So we don't have a monarchy, don't have a king or anything like that anymore. So it's all corporate, and we have what is called the land registry, which is a corporation.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing people don't understand between land and an address. An address is not land. So if you say to someone, I bought a house, and they go, okay, what's the address? They think the address is the land or the house, and go, no, it's not. It's an address. You don't control that address. That address is basically an entry in a database. That's all it is. The postcode, it makes reference to a military grid reference. That's what the postcode is. Now, here's a little trick. If you think you own something, see if you can change it. If you can't change it, you don't own it. So can you change your house number? No. Can you change your street number? No. You don't own it then. That's an address. Now, that address is just on a piece of paper. It's not the land. It's not the house. It's not the bricks and mortar either. So what you've got is you've got a survey with a jurisdiction. That's all it is, which makes reference to an address on a piece of paper. So when you take out a mortgage, it's not for the bricks. It's not for the land. It's for that piece of paper. It's for the worthless title that's with land registry. Now, it gets better than that, because if no man has signed on that title's worthless.
Because it's never been completed in a wet ink signature between both parties. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no deed. There's no, not a real deed. There's no deed. There's no affidavit. There's no original man or woman signing off on that, saying he staked that claim out back in 1832 or whatever, and that land is his. Never happened. No one is going to challenge you. This is the beauty of the system. This is why the system is so fragile. This is why you could take your house back, you could take your car back, you could take your business back, your children back, all the rest of it, because there isn't a living, breathing man or woman on the other side of this so-called contract with a wet ink signature. So you can say, you know what, that address, I don't want it. By the way, if you notice that only poor people have addresses, but rich people have house names.
Yeah.
Because they own the house and they can name it. And the post box, you see that rich people have the post box on the outside where the street is.
Yeah.
That's where their address is. It stops there. The jurisdiction doesn't go past the gates. So when you learn how this works, we can have fun now, mate.
The one thing that I'm seeing at the moment, and obviously I've moved around and I have legally applied for citizenship in different countries. But one of the biggest issues we face at this moment in time is the deliberate destabilization of all Western countries by the infiltration of illegal immigrants, of which most are fighting age men. Would anything within your plan, giving sovereign nations back their heritage and identities, be something that can help people stop what's going on and again stand in the power and literally tell the governments to stop doing what they're doing in allowing the floodgates to be open to people that, but and again, and here's the devil's advocate side, those people are coming in illegally and they are not holding any of the titles, registrations, or legal requirements that the citizens of any country have. Is that purposeful in its execution, do you think?
Yes. Yes. Let me try and explain what's going on with borders, legal. There's a clue in the title, legal. Okay. And correct, these people on boats don't have a title.
No.
Now, I'm not, when I explain how things work, it doesn't mean that I'm, supporting it and all the rest of it. I'm not sort of doing that. I just want to explain to people what's actually going on. And then if you can understand how it all works, you can then see a remedy to it.
Yeah.
The reason why the government officials cannot stop these men entering the land is because they don't have a title. That means the police are powerless to act. Have you heard the stories where these illegal immigrants can buy a car and drive out on the roads and the police can't stop them? They've got no driver's license.
Yeah.
But you see, the problem is because you registered your car, it makes you a registered keeper, which is extremely dangerous. And you've accepted the driver's license, extremely dangerous. That's the contract that the police need to then come at you. But if you don't have any of that, you don't have a national insurance number, there is no birth certificate, the police can't act because they're policy enforcers. So these people coming in on the boats, the police can't touch them at all because they know they will be sued because they don't have the authority to do it. But the politicians at the top of this tree, this system, they know what they're doing. They are deliberately destroying the culture of the land. So I don't recognize countries and borders, but I do recognize culture. And I do recognize the land. So you bring in these people onto these shores, onto these lands, you're going to destabilize that culture. And the culture is basically the history of the people all getting along and all that sort of stuff. They're doing this on purpose. They're doing it to destabilize the economy. They're doing it as well to make life dangerous on the street. So people live in fear and stay in their homes. The reason why they want the people in the homes so they get used to their 15-minute cities. Okay. That's what they're doing, because if you're staying at home anyway, you've locked yourself, you're shut in, and the government says, oh, 15-minute cities, we'll bring shopping to your door. They go, okay. And people just fall for it. So, but the good news is, if you are sovereign, you can do something about it. But what you do is you do not use a legal system, you use your own power, and you serve notice upon these politicians in the private capacity, not using their legal title. You cannot sue an MP. Don't do that. You cannot sue the government. Don't do that. You'll waste your time. You'll spend years in the legal system, spend hundreds of thousands and millions of pounds and get nowhere. But what you can do is you can serve notice on Billy Bob, who is in fact the man or the woman of that politician title in his private capacity. Now, what I'm doing and what the Sovereign Project is doing is we're waking up enough people so they become sovereign. We're training them up so they understand how they can do their own paperwork. And when there's enough of us, we will all be serving notice on all these politicians, 650 of them, and we'll be saying, look, all this stuff that you're doing is violating my rights. Yeah. Not Human Rights Act, my rights. The 50-minute cities, it's violating my right to travel. You put my life in danger by bringing in a different culture. And you're causing, you're doing harm against the children. You're doing harm against the women. And as a man, it's my responsibility to protect the women and children. One person can't do this. There isn't going to be a savior. There isn't going to be someone who's going to step in and do this. It's not, it's going to take a lot of people to do this. I'm thinking 100,000 plus. You get 100,000 plus people who are sovereign and know how to handle themselves and can do this paperwork. It comes to an end. Yeah. All of it. All comes to an end. All of you, Les, all of it. And then the people who have come here on their boats, they will be getting in their boats again to escape as fast as possible, because they will no longer have the police as protection. Because remember, the police are protecting them.
Yeah.
But that's another story. But people have got to stand in their own power.
Definitely. Now, we see people talking about how they access their trust fund from legal title of birth certificates. And apparently these are floating on the stock exchange. Is this true? And are people actually accessing funds in this trust?
Yes, absolutely. You can even check this out. Let's start with the birth certificate. So the birth certificate itself, if you get your copy of your true birth certificate and not the one people see, there is a smaller version and people think that's a birth certificate. And I go, no, that is notification of an entry. That just says, that means that an entry has occurred and a birth certificate has been registered. Yeah. So you want the full birth certificate. And again, it depends on what country you're operating in and how old you are, but you will see on the bottom, it will say something, the words to this effect. This is not to be used as a form of identification. And you go, what? Hang on.
Isn't that what
I know. Yeah. And then it'll say Crown copyright. And you go, what? So it's a birth certificate, but it's not supposed to be used as a form of identification, and it's Crown copyrighted. Excuse me? Okay. Now you'll have some numbers on there, and those numbers can be tracked down, and they can be tracked down to a bond or several bonds that are traded on the stock market. People have done this. I've got friends of mine who have done this and have tracked it down, and they've seen themselves being traded about 1.5 million times back and forth. Yeah. Now, there is a way to figure out how much your trust fund is worth. This is where it gets very difficult, and it is not an internet search. It's not a Google search. Google will not tell. By the way, doing Google's not research, people. But anyway. Oh, yeah. So the way it works is you need to use or hire the services of what is called a Bloomberg forensic auditor. Now, this is a person who is licensed and is allowed to enter the portal or use the portal into the banking system, which is a computer system. It's not accessible by the normal www internet protocols. All right, it's not that style of internet. It's a completely different protocol system, and you've got to have a license to do it and a code and all the rest of it. Now, these Bloomberg forensic auditors charge somewhere between, depending on who you're dealing with and what it is you want, somewhere charged between £1,500 and £150. But once you've paid and you ask for the information, they will give you how much your bond is worth, and they will tell you, they'll give you your ticket number. Click it. So, on the stock, you'll have like a ticket number that's just 3 digits, 3 letters of the alphabet, like gold, GLD, silver, SLV. Okay, there'll be one for you. Okay, so there'll be this alphabetical code, and that'll be yours, and that is your bonds being traded on the stock market. And they're worth, depending on who you were born to, they could be worth, in the Western world, somewhere between 100 million and maybe $1 billion. That's what they're worth for each person. Each person, I know. And let me explain how the national debt works. All right, because people don't know this. So this is
before we jump into the national, back to these trust funds, because
yes.
I was always aware that there was something about this, but I've never seen or known the process of execution to be able to do that. Now, what we are aware of, and again, I mentioned earlier, we talked to a lot of financial experts around the world. We are very well aware that the new digital system is to be a tokenized system. And under the digital system, human beings will be registered in the digital system and traded as stock on the stock exchanges. And this is where the next stages of the whole digital thing is going. Will that just be literally a transfer of that trust fund into a digital basis from
Yes,
what it used to be? Is that what's going to transfer across, and is this what's going to drive the markets?
correct. Now, I'll explain why this is well, you probably know yourself, we do not use money. So we do not use anything with intrinsic value, like a gold coin, silver coin, that's intrinsic value. And money has no third-party risk. So every single country operates these promissory notes. This is the Bank of England. And by the way, even if you work and you receive these, they're not yours at all, because it literally says on it Bank of England. They belong to the Bank of England. And this is another reason why you don't own anything, because if you get a load of these and you then buy a house, the Bank of England says, well, Bank of England's promised to pay for that house, not you. And that is why you're forced to register it. But anyway.
And does it say on the English notes still? And I've been in that many countries with different notes. It used to say, I promise to pay the bearer upon demand. Is that still on the notes now?
Yep, it is. Tiny, tiny little lettering, but that's where that is. See how small it is now?
Yeah.
That is it. Promise to pay the bearer the sum of. And by the way, people have forgotten this. They don't even know why it's called a pound. Well, the pound is referring to a weight. This used to be 5 pounds of silver, sterling silver, and it used to be the pound sterling. And they've stolen the silver. So everyone's passing these around, okay? These are promissory notes. Now, this is a debt. So you go, okay, you've got to understand basic economics. So whenever there is debt, there is a creditor. You've got to have both at the same time. When one exists, so does the other. So you go, okay, then. So you've got these debt notes. So who's the creditor? This is what I started digging into back in 2008 because of the credit, when they were saying the money's running out and all this credit. And this is when I started learning about fiat currency and all this. And I go, what? What's all about? Promissory notes, what? And so I had to teach myself economics. So I had to go and do that. So I thought, who's the creditor? Now, in this system, only a living, breathing man or woman can be a creditor. You have to be alive to give credit. Credit means credibility. All right. So you are the creditor. So how this works is, again, it goes back to when you were born and you were registered and you were placed into trust, and there was two certificates created. One of them, well, there's 3 documents. The first document is basically I'm going to call it the manufacturer's statement of origin, because it's a commerce system. So there has to be an original document that states something new has been created. And this would be the mother. The mother signs off and she says a brand new baby has been created. She's the creator. She created it. She's created it. And it's a document. And this is the birth notification form. And that form is used as the manufacturer's statement of origin. Same as a car. If you go and buy your brand new Lamborghini, there'll be a manufacturer's statement of origin from Lamborghini. Unfortunately, that goes to the government and they sell that. But anyway, that's another story. So the mum creates that document. That's the thing that's got real value. They put that into trust and they create 2 documents. One is the certificate of live birth, and the other one is called the birth certificate. Now, the certificate of live birth is the one that is used to create the credit. Okay, that operates at the national level. Remember, I was talking about the 2 separate jurisdictions earlier, jurisdiction number 2. So jurisdiction number 2, the certificate of live birth operates within what is called a foreign situs trust. Foreign because it's not operating within the country. You are outside of a country. You're operating higher than a country. You've got diplomatic immunity. You're above it all. Situs means tax, and trust is a trust. So foreign situs trust, that is what is used to create credit. Now, every single country will want to create what's called a birth certificate. That's what they have control of. That is your surety name, your surname, and that is the debtor. That's the other side of this equation. This is what they're setting up as. Now, a country which operates at the 3rd jurisdiction controls that. Now, let's use the UK corporation as an example, and everyone can play this game. You can look this up online. Don't take my word for it, but you'll look up the Sestake v Act 1666. It's on the government's own website, and it's telling you. It doesn't tell you in plain English. It tells you in legalese, and you've got to learn how to read, but it's clearly using words that's referring to a trust. The government uses this Sestake v trust to gain access to your foreign citus trust and collect credits. And it can be 100 million, a billion, whatever. You don't know this, but every time you use one of these, a pen, and you sign in blue ink, you are acting as a creditor. So I think everyone knows by now that banks don't lend money when it's a mortgage. So you go and get a mortgage or a car loan or whatever it is. What these mortgage companies are doing, or credit card companies or car loan companies are doing, what they're actually doing is facilitating your credit for you. So you go in, you'll sign in the blue ink. By the way, for a mortgage company to do this, there has to be 2 signatures on that mortgage contract. And the way they get around this is the mortgage advisor will sign, and she'll get a piece of paper and she'll go, can you sign here, sign here, sign here? And she's put the X on. That's the first signature. Then you'll sign your second signature. So there's 2 signatures. So now that document is used. It basically goes through the central bank, which will be the Bank of England. Bank of England dips into your foreign citus trust, gets that, say, £250,000 for that Lamborghini, scoops it out of your trust fund, gives it to you. It converts it into these. These are what are called public credit. Okay. Your credit is private, operating at the national level. That's national private. And it's converted into these, which is public credit. And then you go off and buy your Lamborghini. By the way, to convert those 2 forms of credit, which will be your national credit, private credit, to public credit, there is stamp duty to pay because they could put a stamp on the paperwork. That's why you pay stamp duty on a house. Anyway, so you get...
Based on what we're saying here, the central banks control your trust fund.
Yes.
And then they loan it to the bank, which loans it to you to buy it, but then you pay it back with interest.
Yes.
So, but that money was already yours. So if that's the case, let's say you own a car. Perfect example. We're talking cars, and we like talking cars anyway.
Yeah.
So you own a car, you go and take a loan out on a car, and you pay it back with interest. But you are issued a certificate of not ownership, but you are a registered keeper of the car, which means you don't own the car, even though you think you do, and even though you're paying for it, but even though you've already paid for it out your trust fund. There has to be a procedure that you can use where you can literally say, I've already paid for this.
Yes.
And
yes.
How would you put a bank on notification that the loan you have for that vehicle has already been paid? Or what could you ask the bank to provide that proves that? Because they're part and parcel of this. They're in the loop. They know what they're doing as well.
Absolutely correct. And there is a remedy. So this is why you have to understand how it works before you can understand the remedy, you see. Because now you know that you're the creditor and it's come out of your trust fund. So, you know, when you get that 250,000, you're supposed to just buy your Lamborghini and go, that's it. I don't make payments because remember, I'm the beneficiary of the trust. I'm not paying anything back. It's credit out my trust fund. And so I do have some friends and, you know, I've got some contacts and I do know some lawyers and don't want to go too much, but they're having a good fun game on this. But the way you do it is you challenge the creditor. You can do this with all debt. Okay. So that includes credit cards, bank loans, mortgages, and all this. So what you would do, and I'm not saying this is going to be super easy and the mortgage company is going to go, yeah, hands up, no worries, we'll give you the money back. All right.
I'm not going down that right. I can guarantee that.
Not going to do that. But if you hang in there and you want to put, say, a year, maybe 2, and you want to fight and you know exactly what you're doing, like my friends are doing, oh, yes, it will work. So the way it works is you challenge the creditor. So you contact the. By the way, you've got to learn how to do notices and paper. You've got to learn all this.
Yeah.
This is not for the layperson. You've got to understand all this. You've got to understand trusts and all this. You've got to know it. It's like playing chess. If you don't know what the pieces do, you're going to lose the game.
Yeah.
So you go and you contact the bank, and you basically just say, "I'd like to see the original mortgage contract, please." And they'll say, "Oh, it doesn't exist." They won't say that straight away. They'll bluff, and bluff, because there is no contract. Okay, because what was going on is that the mortgage company, they're not lending you anything. They were facilitating your credit. But you're saying, well, where's the loan document, the contract? You're asking to see that. Okay. They can't deliver that. They can't give it to you because it doesn't exist. So then eventually they'll have to admit to this and say, no, it doesn't exist. Now, if they turn around and say, okay, it doesn't exist. And by the way, I do know a friend who did it and they got a letter back and the bank admitted it didn't exist. They had to eventually. Yeah. Then you can go down the road of saying, right, well, why am I making monthly payments then? And then you start doing that. And you can throw in, here's a little juicy tip for you, that a 3,000-year mortgage. Let me explain how this works. Remember back in the day, I was talking about the king and God and all the rest of it, right? And before they started this scam of the land, they knew, the king and all that knew, and the people who ran the Vatican and the church and all that knew they were scamming people. And they thought, ooh, what happens if God turns up? And they believe that God's going to turn up every 3,000 years, right? And if God turns up to check out on things and finds the scam, he's not going to be too happy. And you can look this up, but in UK legislation, there is a clause where every person who takes a mortgage out has the right to make it a 3,000-year mortgage.
Wow.
So what that means is you take your mortgage out for 25 years, and you might be, say it's £1 million or whatever, and you take your mortgage out for 25 years, and then you're paying £3,000 a month, whatever. You turn around and say, no, I want that mortgage over 3,000 years, please. And suddenly your monthly payments drops down to like £1.50 a month. But then what happens after that is then the banks basically close the account because they say it's not worth our time collecting £1.50 a month. And then you go, well, okay, if the account's closed, what about all the other payments I made? I want them back.
Oh.
Trust me, you got to learn this stuff.
Now, in the UK, and obviously we talked about different pieces of paper and things that were brought into place over history. But how is the Magna Carta an important part of history in regards to sovereignty of people?
Okay, right. Okay. Yes, the Magna Carta. Now, one of the things you've got to understand about the Magna Carta basically means big contract. That's what it means. Right. And so you've got to ask yourself, okay, who was the contract with? It was the king and about 25 barons. Okay. Now, the Magna Carta spoke about people, but remember, people are chattel. So this is really just saying that the king and the barons were sort of equal, but the people were still serfs. Okay. But the thing about the Magna Carta is it was the beginning of the idea that an individual could be at least on par with king. You know, this idea of a king at the top was getting old. And it was the beginning of a parliament. It was still a trap, as we spoke about earlier. It's still a scam. But here's the thing. If you're trying to use the Magna Carta today, it only works in a certain jurisdiction. It does not work in the UK. It only works in England. And England is just another corporate jurisdiction. It's not the land. Now, there's different forms of corporations. There's obviously the business type, which is McDonald's. You've got a crown corporation. That's basically used to be a king, but now it's a business. You've got regal. That's a monarchy. You've got religious corporations like the church. That's a religious corporation. So the Magna Carta operates within the England Corporation and obviously is run by the King Charles. Now, of course, he's not the king of the UK, is he? He's the king of England. So that gives you a clue straight away that he's operating in a different jurisdiction. And the Magna Carta only operates for people who want to accept the title people. And I don't want to because that makes me chattel. Now, I did have it on good authority from a solicitor lawyer friend of mine. I do know quite a few lawyers now that I can't mention their names, but they anyway, decent people who realize that they're caught up in this system. And anyway, the information is that all lawyers and solicitors have basically said ignore Magna Carta if anyone tries using it. Don't do the. I try and explain to people, don't use free man on the land stuff if you're trying to fight this. Don't do that. Don't do Magna Carta stuff. Don't do that. Don't use constitutions unless you really know what you're doing. If you've got a correct remedy and you know what you're doing, use it, but don't hide behind it. If you go into a courtroom going Magna Carta and common law this, you'll be decimated. Yeah. Decimated. So the Magna Carta does not operate in the UK corporation, but it does operate within the jurisdiction of England. So hopefully that's explained it in layman's terms.
What amazed me, with all the sovereign individual rights, and obviously we mentioned the likes of the Black's Law Dictionary, and we noticed, that some lawyers, solicitors and judges, they don't know a lot about this. But with the power that this has, I'm really surprised that people have not set up their own lawyers and solicitor companies to actually go to court on behalf of other people and defend them using this knowledge. It should be big business.
I can explain, and I can't say too much, but let me just try and phrase this. Now, if an individual lawyer decides to step out of his comfort zone and challenge the system, that's the end of his career. Yes. He'll be decimated. So it will be, he loses his license, he's evicted or disbarred, he's gone, and they will destroy his life. So they'll make up stories about him and all of it. We've seen it done many, many times on other people who speak out. So an individual lawyer, barrister, can't do this. They go after his children, they go after his family. I can understand it. Now, good news is don't want to say too much, but there are lawyers and barristers out there who are talking behind the scenes, and they are saying they don't like what's going on. They are considering, as a group, to stand out and start helping people, but they have to see enough people who want to stand with them. Yeah. Okay, this is where the Sovereign Project comes in. Our network is growing bigger and bigger every day. About 10 people a day join. I got to get these up to massive numbers. I want 100 people, 1,000 people a day learning this stuff. I need a membership in the hundreds of thousands who are switched on people, have at least the basic understanding of what's going on. And then these lawyer people, they will feel comfortable to walk away. Some of these guys are earning big money, like 500,000 a year, give up the Porsche and all the rest of it. They'll walk away. But as a group, and then they will be protected within a massive, large number of sovereign people. Okay, so that's what I'm looking to do. At the moment, there isn't a big enough movement out there. There's plenty of groups, but they're very small, very local. There's not a big enough network. And the Sovereign Project, we will reach out to anybody. If you want freedom and you are honorable and you're doing it for the right reasons, you're not scamming anybody, we will work with you, and you can join our network, and that will expand their reach as well. So if they join the Sovereign Project, that expands their reach as well. When I get enough people trained up, know how this works, got rid of the slave mentality, these lawyers will jump on board, and then things will start kicking off. Yeah. We haven't got a lot of time. So
no.
People have got to get, what annoys me is when people say they've got no time. They say, because I offer a workshop here where I live, and I do a workshop. In fact, three days a week. I'll do a Wednesday morning, a Thursday night, and a Sunday afternoon. And I'm explaining this for free. People can come down and, and then some people say, I don't have the time. Yeah. All right, okay, fine. Well, when they come to your house and force a vaccine on you, then don't come crying to me.
No, that's it. Yeah, people are their own worst enemies. Now, the Sovereign Project and the information that's within the Sovereign Project, is this only usable within the UK, or will this transfer across Canada, the US, any border in the world, and be able to be used in the same manner?
Correct. It's universal, global. Now, we do a 22-week course. Okay. Now, for the vast amount of that course, it's global. You know, notices are notices. Doesn't matter where you are. Using your own power, using signatures, autographs, doesn't matter where you are. The 22-week course we hold shows you how to use the lien process, so you can go after these politicians and criminals working for government. Now, of course, that lien process only operates within the UK legal system. That's the difference. But the process is still the same in other countries. It's just the forms, by the way, this is the only time you should use forms, will be different. Now, if you're going to use a legal system to sue somebody and go after them, which is what I help people learn to do, you will have to use a legal system. You will have to use the black signature. You will have to use your surname and your national insurance number or social security number. And you will have to fill out forms. But as long as you know this, then you can play the game. That doesn't matter. As long as you know that you are the ghost director of your corporation, and it's your corporation that's actually in that courtroom, not you. As long as you know that, you can play the game.
Yeah, definitely. Now, are people who are using your course, using the information and actually tackling the corporations and the courts successfully? Are we starting to is it possible once somebody goes to court and uses this, is it possible for this to almost become case law, or is case law only their law?
Good point. In fact, yes, case law is their law. Okay. And this is the power of what we have. We have the power because of the weakness of their system. So case law doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
No, it applies to them. It's their system. So this is what's actually happening right now. People are taking on their individual fights using some sovereign project documentation, which we give away for free, and they're winning. Some of the battles are small, but they're winning. We've got a case that's gone through regarding the council tax, and
yeah, in there with
that. Completely fraudulent. It's now being exposed that the councils are using fake liability orders. They can't create them. And without a liability order, then that means the police can't act, the courts can't act, and everything else is fraudulent. And that was proven in court by someone else who actually went in there and took the council to court. In fact, he ended up taking the debt collectors to court, and he challenged the debt collectors. And he said, I want to see that liability order. And it turns out the debt collectors didn't have it. And because they didn't have it, everything that they did, the debt collectors, was illegal and unlawful. He got $4 grand.
Would I be right in thinking as well, and obviously looking at the state of the world now, I'm seeing defaults on debt globally rise to levels that we've never seen, and obviously the debt bubble is hyperinflated, and we're looking at quite a nasty lockup of the financial system because of this. But when we get back to debt collectors, if somebody is contacted by a debt collector, and let's say they had a bank loan and they didn't pay that bank loan, or they didn't pay that mortgage, would I be right in thinking that the moment a debt collector gets involved, that the bank have discharged that debt and allowed the debt collector to buy that debt from them in order for them to pursue it for their own financial gain?
Yes. Now, that's the official narrative. But what we've found out is the debt collectors aren't even doing that. They're actually buying data. So they're breaking all their own rules.
Right.
Because this is how it works in debt. Okay. This is how the legal system actually works. I'll just give it layman terms. Debt only exists if the court says so through a liability order, or if a contract is agreed to be valid, then the debt exists. Hammer goes down. Now, on a debt, this is where we've got to understand titles. In debt, there's two parts to debt. There's the equitable title and the right to claim. They're two separate things. The equitable title is the value of the debt, like £10,000. That's the value of it. So if let's say, for example, the debt collector did buy that debt. He bought the 10,000. He did buy it. Let's say he did.
Yeah.
And he bought it. If he doesn't also buy the right to claim, he can't claim it. So he's paid your debt off. So what you do, and it's a bit more complicated than this, but we have a debt validation process on my website. It's free download, have a read, loads of stuff in there. It's very simple to follow once you've read it a few times. So what you do is if a debt collector does contact you and says you've got to pay this debt, you ask him some questions. You ask him two main questions. One of them, first, identify yourself. Who are you? But then I want to see the deed of assignment and I want to see the novation agreement. And then suddenly,
should there also be a contract between you and the debt collector?
Correct. You say, where's the contract? I want to see the original contract from the original creditor. I want to see the new contract that the novation agreement created. There isn't one. There is no novation agreement. And I want to see maybe the deed of assignment then. There isn't one. Doesn't exist. And in most cases, like for example, this is why the council tax is so fraudulent and so easy to destroy, because there was no original contract to begin with. So without an original contract, how can the debt even be sold? It can't. So the debt collectors are bluffing. But you can go after the debt collectors and you can challenge them in court and say, well, where's the deed of assignment? Where's the novation agreement? Where's the original contract? Oh, it doesn't exist. I mean, the thing with the council tax, you can ask for the invoice. Because if you receive a bill, here's the thing: every single person who's received a bill, council tax bill, that's fraud, because you didn't put an order in. So if you get a bill through the post, you can contact the council and say, "Oh, I want to see the invoice." Yeah, it doesn't exist. So how can I get a bill then?
So let's go back to mortgages with banks. If somebody has a mortgage and when you sign the paperwork, that money is taken from the central bank.
Yes.
We understand how the banks operate in the creation of money under fractional reserve lending, and even that's a whole thing to talk about. But the creation of the mortgage means that the bank have been paid by you. Then they charge you and you pay them back. But at the same time, they also sell the mortgage-backed securities on the stock exchange. So the bank effectively get paid 3 times for the creation of this mortgage.
Yes.
Is there a way that people can go, literally, once they take a mortgage out, that they can go into a bank and say, I've already paid that?
Yes. And it even gets worse because the mortgage company take out insurance that you pay for. And then when you don't make payments, they claim on the insurance.
And I imagine it's the same with vehicles as well. If you buy a car and you pay the insurance premium as part of your payments, and then you fail to make the payments, the bank will claim the payments back from the insurance company, which means the bank has been paid again. So when they come after you to say you need to pay us, again, people can say, you've already been paid. And several times.
Several times, yes. They are triple dipping, quadruple dipping. Let me tell you something else about car insurance as well. You self-insure. And the average person doesn't know this. You see, the insurance company itself, they're not selling you an actual insurance policy. What they're actually doing is facilitating your credit. So when you take out car insurance for your Lamborghini, you agree with the insurance company that they can access your foreign situs trust and create a bond. They will create a bond in your name, and it's around $4 million worth. That's what it's worth, okay? The insurance company then holds on to that, and if you have an accident, that bond is supposed to pay for the accident damage and the administrative costs. Now, here's the kicker. After the 12 months, you're supposed to get that bond back. But because you don't know about it, and you don't claim it, and they don't have to tell you, they sit on that bond. And after 3 years, they have the right to claim it. It's an unclaimed bond. Yeah. And they claim it. It's $4 million. And they sell it on the debt market. I was watching, I can't remember his name. I wish I could remember his name. But there's this auditor, this financial auditor. And he made a claim that the insurance company is worth more than the banks.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And that's
Because
it.
everyone's doing that.
I worked for insurance industries for years, and the self-insurance thing we saw with major corporations. So a major corporation would come along and they'd say to the insurance company, "We want to self-insure." And the
Yes.
insurance company would say, "Okay, set up an account, place £1 million in it, and we will manage." And basically, that's what it is. They will manage the insurance for them. They'll issue them certificates. And should a vehicle within the fleet of this corporation have an accident or a claim, the insurance company just handled it and managed it like a broker would. And the money came out of the pot that was put in the bank. So you put a million, 2 million in a bank and it's accruing interest. So
Mm,
the interest that they were accruing um, realistically paid for any eventuality of any claims. And so the,
yeah.
the, the initial investment of a million, 2 million, whatever it is they put in, was never even touched because the interest was always paying for the claims that would come in on a basis, maybe 5 or 6 claims a year, whatever it was, and they were covered. So at the end of the day, when the insurance was up for renewal, and let's say they went somewhere else, these corporations would close the account and maybe take from 1 million that they put in, they may have 1.7 million in that account. They take the 1.7 million back, and they never ever paid anything in regards to a claim. It was all just based on the banks giving the interest on the money that was being held. And it's quite an interesting thing that those who have the money to do so know how to cheat the system for their own financial gain in regards, and especially when it comes to insurance.
Yes, absolutely. And then when you find out that you're actually self-insuring through bonds, and then you get stung for high premiums because everyone's noticed that the car insurance is like doubled or quadrupled in the past 12 months. Someone who was paying like £600 a year suddenly got a bill for 2,500. It's like single mothers trying to just run Ford Fiestas or something,
Yeah.
and they're in tears on YouTube saying you can't afford it, and knowing that the insurance companies are making $4 million per policy at least.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. It
And
really is.
if
Yeah.
people educate themselves to this,
Yeah.
agree to
Go and
take
look
an
it up.
insurance policy out and then challenge it, um,
Yes.
what would you recommend for people asserting the rights on a daily basis? And
Mhm.
how can they change what is spoken to empower themselves?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Now, I was helping a lot of people with their language. This is why I run a workshop. And I do help people. See, people slip into this mistake. And we did actually do a little bit of role play with a lot of people trying to get rid of the brainwashing. So this was back in the day with the mask stuff. And people just slipped into that slave mentality, oh, put your mask on. And then people just automatically did it. And I go,
Yeah,
what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you putting that? So I've got to get got to get rid of that. So one of the things you should do is don't be a doormat anymore. If someone's asking you questions, you turn it around and you start asking questions. So the word asking, as king, I am the king. I am the king in my dominion. I am asking the questions. So if someone asks me questions, I turn it around, and so if they're asking me who I am, I go, who are you? Identify yourself.
yeah,
That's how you should do it. It should be automatic. And like I say, there's three things that you should always challenge: obligation, informed consent, and authority on
yeah,
everything. They're the three things. So if someone says you've got to do the thing, am I obligated to do it?
yeah,
And that's, where are you getting the authority from? Where's my informed consent? So that's what people have got to, they've got to practice it.
yeah.
So,
I had exactly the same thing in Canada, where we went to a restaurant and we walked in through the entrance, and the tables were probably 3 or 4 feet away from us. Well, the manager of the restaurant decided they were going to scream at us, put your masks on. And I looked and I said, no. And I said, you want me to walk 3 feet in a mask, sit down, take it off to eat? Yeah. Does that make any sense? I said,
doesn't it?
next, I said, you don't have any authority over me. So they called the police. So I
Yeah.
waited, and the
Mhm.
police came, and rather than being aggressive and horrible, I was polite and nice, and I spoke to the police, and I pulled out a piece of paper and quite promptly started to explain the law and what mandates are and what power it has, and also obviously the power of authority. The policeman actually agreed with me, and the beauty is they went in and had to explain it to the business owner that this is the law and that's what it is. We never went back into the place, but this happened on a couple of occasions, and it's amazing what people can do once they empower themselves with legal knowledge and what things really mean. And I think that if people do empower themselves with this, it gives them a far wider scale to improve their lives massively on a daily basis, not only in interactions like that where law can't apply, but also financially. And I think once people have that confidence within them, they grow into so much better people, and they will literally figure out that their lifestyle can become something absolutely marvelous just by taking the time to educate themselves. And obviously, this is the purpose of the Sovereign Project as a whole.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And that's what a lot of people have said to me. They've done the course, they've done it for about 2 to 3 years now, and they feel so much better. They've got so much more confidence. They can handle their lives. You know, it's the trick is to take responsibility of your life. That's the trick. And you will feel so much better. And that's especially as a man. If you're a man, you have to be responsible for your life. You have to be. Set goals, targets, make decisions, be professional. Oh, by the way, especially as a man, make sure you have a good name. Make a good name for yourself. So if someone says my name, I'm hoping that people say good things about me and go, oh yeah, that guy's straight. He's, you can trust him 100%, that sort of stuff. And that's what you should be doing as a man. Your name should mean something, and unfortunately, most men don't know that.
Fortunately, as well, I think over the past, I would say at least the past 4.5 years, and those people watching it will probably know who I'm on about in regards to these people, but there has been a lot of people come to the forefront of what I consider to be the truth movement, and they're nothing but bad actors giving bad advice and encouraging people to do things in a manner that will get them into trouble. Um, you know, People can protect themselves. People should stand in their own power and educate. Do you think people give the power away far too often
Oh, yeah.
in the hope that somebody else is going to save them?
Yes. Yeah, exactly right. People fold too easily, and they think they're going to be saved. I see it all the time, and it's this slave mentality. Here's the thing: I when I talk to someone, if they are asking me what to do, like they've got a problem, well, what do I do? What do I do? I say, you've got the wrong mentality. I can't tell you what to do. And a
Yeah,
sovereign would never ask that anyway. So a sovereign will ask, how does it work? Oh, right. Now I can help you. I can now sit you down and explain how it works, and then you can make a decision on what you want to do next. So yeah, there's two types of people. People who say, what do I do? And all the rest of it. Can't help them. Can't help them. So yeah, and most people are like that. They fold and they comply, and they think I can comply my way out of tyranny. No, you can't.
yeah. No, that's it. Should people understand that, upon demands of corporations and courts, especially when they're in court or dealing with big corporations, should people understand that it is advisable to counter offer with what we call conditional acceptance of contract within that discussion? And what can you tell people about conditional acceptance and how that can be used?
Yes, now conditional acceptance. It is useful in certain remedies. Now, I know back in 2021, a lot of people were getting into this regarding mandate stuff and masks and all the rest of it, which is fine. Now, I tend to try and explain to people that you shouldn't go straight in with a conditional acceptance. You should start, questioning obligation, authority, and all the rest of it. Let's see the contract. Do all that first.
Yeah.
But let's just talk on what a court is, because a lot of people think a court is something to do with law. No, it isn't. On a simplistic level, it's effectively a place to carry out commerce. And it only deals in legal titles and corporations and not the living. All right. Living man and woman do not operate in these jurisdictions. That's at a low level. A slightly higher level is operating as a bank. So the word bench means bank. So the language is when the judge says approach the bench, he's basically saying approach the bank to make your payment. When he says, are you, yeah. And then when he says, are you guilty or not guilty? He's saying, are you going to pay or not pay? Guilt is in gilts, government bonds. So it's all in the language. Yeah. And then at a higher level, it's actually operating as a trust. And you are actually the beneficiary. So you walk into there, you are the beneficiary, highest of the high. And you've got a trustee, you've got an administrator in there. Normally the judge is operating as the administrator. And if you can take control of the trust, you can take control of that court. And say it's a speeding ticket. If you win and you are the beneficiary and you can take control of that court, then the prosecutor has to pay the ticket because he's just lost. Because it was the prosecutor who created the writ in the first place. So
nice. So I mean, also within a court, when you enter the court, you are on trial and you are asked to give your plea and stay in the dock.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about maritime admiralty law and lex mercatoria, please?
Yes. Maritime law. Right, let me just touch on the basics. A lot of people understand about admiralty law and maritime law. They get a bit confused. Admiralty law is, now we're using the word law. It's not. It's think of it as a corporate jurisdiction out at sea. Okay, and they're actually making policy, not law. Now, admiralty law is usually run by a set of judges, and they are the ones who have the ability to make law. So admiralty law makes the law, and then the maritime law is to carry out that law by a captain. So a captain is a bit lower down, but he carries out the law. That's the two. Now, let's try and explain this in layman's terms. Hopefully everyone understands by now that a country is not the land. It is a corporate jurisdiction. And when you enter, and you mentioned the word dock, you enter this courtroom, you are literally leaving the jurisdiction of your country and you're entering a ship in dry dock. Okay. And it's a foreign vessel. So you've now left the UK. You're now on a foreign vessel. All right. And there's a little gate. But if you walk past that gate, you've accepted the jurisdiction. You're now on board that ship. Now, it gets quite dangerous here because if you do that and you've not taken control of the court, then effectively the judge is acting like the captain of that ship and he is God. Mm-hmm. Whatever he says, he can do whatever he wants. Now, in this jurisdiction, the Bill of Rights does not apply. Magna Carta does not apply. Extra statutes do not apply. None of it. The bench book does not apply. None of it applies unless you can get that judge to accept the jurisdiction. So if you can go in there and try and get him on the Bill of Rights, and you can ask him a simple question. And by the way, I have tried this, but I went up against a judge for 2.5 hours and he was completely corrupt. And if I got time, I'll mention the name bit as well. Yeah. But I was trying to get him on the Bill of Rights and he would not even let me answer that question, ask that question. As soon as I started talking, he was slamming his hammer down. Oi, no, what's going on? I'm just asking a straightforward question. So every time I tried to get him on these things, he would shut me down and would not let me speak because he knew if I managed to ask it, and I've trapped him because he can either say yes or no, and either way he's lost. Now the name. Let me just talk about the name in court. If you go into court, they will ask you, "Are you Mr. Smith?" Now, if you make the mistake of saying yes, I'm Mr. Smith, that is the Mr. Smith that's written on his paperwork. So that's the name he controls. So when he says, "Are you Mr. Smith?" he's saying, "Are you this Mr. Smith?" Yeah. And if you say yes, right? So to get away that, instead of talking, you will write your name down on a piece of paper and go, "There you go, Your Honor, that's my name." He won't take it because he's just lost the game, hasn't he? Because he can't, because I've written it. I'm the authors of it. And you mentioned the plea. So the plea, yes, you are made to give your plea. Right. But the problem is if you do that, you've lost. It doesn't matter if you plead guilty or not guilty because you've accepted the plea. A plea means pleading. So when you're in that position, think about being on your knees, hands together, pleading. of someone of a higher authority. So you can't actually give a plea. So you have a third option, and you turn up and you say, I'm here by special appearance, not general. If you turn up as general appearance, you've lost. Special appearance, I'm taking control. And you say, I'm here to listen to the claim made upon me. Not making a plea, not guilty, not doing any of that. Because it's a little bit like a conditional acceptance, because if you plead guilty or not guilty, you're accepting the charge. You see how that works? It's like if I say to you, have you paid your council tax bill? All right. Now that's a loaded question. You can't answer that either way. Because if you say no, you've just agreed you've got a council tax bill, but you haven't paid it. Now I can come after you if I'm the judge. And of course, if you say yes, you said you've accepted the bill and you've paid it. So that's a loaded question. So the plea, you can't accept a plea, you've lost, but they will force one on you. So the judge will probably force the name upon you, and he will make a plea in your absence. You know, so if you won't make a plea, he'll say, "Oh, I'm putting you down as not guilty." But then you've got to challenge the judge, and you go, "Hang on, judge, did I authorize you to speak for me?" You can't do that. The judge doesn't have the right to do that anyway. But you can battle a judge. But these right now, judges are so far corrupt now. That's why I've got some of my friends who are lawyers and barristers, and they're saying this to me in private, in confidence, saying what they're seeing in the courts today is way beyond what was happening 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Out of control. I think the system is cracking at the seams, and the judges, you're seeing it with the judges throwing stuff and swearing and angry and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
We've got to keep putting the pressure on.
Is there any cues when you head into a court? I was always under the impression that if you went into a court and the flag was gold fringed,
oh yes,
that determines that the court will be acting under Admiralty law. Because of the gold fringe flag. Is there any pointers that if people do end up in court, that they can walk into a court and immediately see certain cues that would alert them to how the court would be conducted in that day?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I suggest people research flags. I can touch on it. I have studied it a little bit. I'm a bit rusty. I haven't done it in several years. But there's a whole hidden message within flags in general. The gold fringe around a flag can mean two things. Either the country has been claimed, or the country is not operating within that courtroom. It's a military court and not a civilian court, if you like. But you also, not just a flag, but you've also got to look at what's on top of the flagpole. So you've got these symbols on it. Now, the round ball, again, I'm doing this from memory now, pretty much means peace. If it's got a point on it, like you've seen those, it means at war. There's eagles. Now, if there's an eagle on there, and it also depends on the pointing of the wings, if I remember rightly, but that is also referring to Roman civil code, civil procedures, bar association, the emperor, all this sort of stuff. Oh, by the way, you might notice a lot of symbolism, like Caesar's wreath. You'll see that on the, there we go. So it's all there. So that is still operating today. So Roman civil law, which is over 2,000 years old now, is still operating, but it's controlled by the Bar Association. So yeah, you've got to look at the flags, all these symbolism that it tells you. But yeah, study flags.
We have a triangle, a hub of principalities in the world. And these principalities are the City of London,
yes,
the Vatican, and Washington, D.C. And all of these are not party to the rule of law within the countries that they reside. The City of London is for financial. The Vatican is for religion. And the US is governance, but also the main core of the military-industrial complex, again, for wars, which we discussed a little bit earlier. How can the sovereign status of an individual be purposeful in places that are principalities on their own? And can this be executed within these areas that do not conform to the law of the land that they are within?
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Now we've got to understand what sovereignty means. Okay. You've got sovereignty in title and sovereignty in status. They're two separate things. You do not want sovereignty in title because that pulls you into their legal system. So a king or a queen is sovereign in title only, but it's actually the people who are above the king who are sovereign in status. That operates above all. So as soon as you, like I made the metaphor where looking down at the game board. Okay. Once you've got your sovereign in status, you are operating the game above the game board. You are operating above the Vatican. You're operating above all these corporations. Okay. So as long as you know that, and this is again, it's not a piece of paper. A lot of people say, "Oh, do I have to fill out forms in the legal system?" No, no, no. You cannot get your sovereignty from the legal system. What you can do in using the legal system is elevate your birth certificate from that of a pauper up to one of a diplomat, or like on your passport, like a type P. So type P is pauper, plebeian, partner, means a few other things. And you can operate as a type D, which means diplomat, which means you've elevated your birth certificate above governments. You've got diplomatic immunity, but that is your legal fiction. That's your birth certificate. It's still not you. You yourself, the living, is still operating way above it. Now they know that they can't touch you if you know your status as the living, breathing, and they can't touch man. They can't do that. They go against God. So it's not paperwork that saves you. It's your mindset that saves you. So don't think there's a piece of paperwork and I can walk into the Vatican and go, "Oh, I've got my piece of paper in here and I can do it."
Yeah.
But you mentioned on the Vatican, the Vatican also has control of the birth certificates. That's their job. Because the Vatican is named after a goddess called Vatica. And Vatica is a demon goddess of the underworld. And her job was to seize the lost souls and drag them into the underworld. So it seems fitting that the Vatican is called after the Vatica, the goddess, the demon goddess who collected.
I don't believe for one moment it's a coincidence at all. I mean, the amount of demonic symbolism within the Vatican itself goes beyond coincidence anymore. And
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
we're back to the whole paedophile thing and the way that they operate within paedophilia. And yeah, unfortunately, it appears that with religion like that, it's been created again as a purposeful control mechanism over humanity around it. And what you just said there further reinforces everything that I believed it was in the first place. Um, you know, people should really say, and religion aside, and this goes under, people's rights are God-given,
Mhm.
and these inalienable rights, what would the term to you inalienable mean in regards to the rights that people receive under that knowledge?
Yes. Yeah, let's talk. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's talk about unalienable. There's unalienable and inalienable rights. Okay, so you've got to be very careful on that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, anyone can believe in God. So, I'm not going against anyone who does, whatever. It's their choice.
Yeah.
And it's their right to say they get their rights from God if they wish. It's their choice. Okay.
But
Yeah.
if people did do their due diligence and
Mhm.
start research, rather than be told what to think by the people in the church, rather than be told what to think by what's written in the Bible, if people did their own due diligence and their own research, they would realize that this is, again, a huge control mechanism. And I was only
Yes.
talking to somebody this morning, actually, because I have a lot of conversations online with people about religion, and I'm not an atheist,
Mhm.
but I'm not religious either.
Mhm.
And I had to explain to somebody this morning because they were quoting scripture, chapter and verse, in regards to certain things, and they were saying that the prophecies of the Bible were coming true. And what was quite interesting is I went back to them and I said, you have to understand that the very people that wrote the Bible are the very people who have passed the batons of power and influence and authority over humanity right the way through all the empires and generations, right to the modern day where we are. And they have continued this agenda of control. So if you manage to be the person back when the Bible was first written and put together, you know that the people that you are passing the baton to moving forward are going to be the very people that want to contain you, continue to have the power over you, and they are going to do everything that that book says to make it look absolutely real, because that is well within their power to do so.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and with the Bible as well, I mean, I know that when a lot of people go to court, they have to swear on the Bible itself. And I do believe that that is also a sign of giving away your power within that courtroom.
It is. In fact, we can touch on that as well, is because the people who control this system, they believe in God, but they believe in a completely different set of gods, not the Christian God. So they believe in Baphomet, Baal, for example. They're the gods that they worship. There's a couple of others, can't quite remember. Now, what they've done is the book, the Bible, the King James, is they've actually removed the Christian God from that particular Bible, and they've done it using a certain set of fonts. This is why people can't read, because they don't understand the difference in fonts, bold, italic, underlining, all this sort of stuff. They don't understand what that means. So what they've done is, if you look at the modern day Bible, you'll see that they make the reference to Lord, but it's written in a form of Pig Latin. Now, Latin is a bicameral language. So Latin can only be written in all caps or all lowercase. You've got to pick. You can't mix them. English is a mixture. So you can use title, capitals and also lowercase. Now, Pig Latin is where you are using different size fonts of capital letters. So if you look at the word Lord, they're going to use a very large L, capital letter, and then the O-R-D is still capitals, but a smaller font.
Yeah.
And that has the effect of splitting the word up. So it doesn't say Lord at all because the fonts are different. So, yes. So when you swear on a Bible, and they trick you, and again, they'll say, do you promise to tell the whole truth? Well, how can you possibly tell the whole truth? I don't know the whole truth. I can tell my truth. The whole truth. So they trick you again, and they get you to swear on their Bible, which is Baphomet and Baal and all the rest of them. But yeah, I mean, I put all this stuff in a book. This information is free to download on my website if people want to know more. It's all in there. It tells you the hidden secret operation of courts, so you'll know about all the symbolism and what's going on all sleight of hand. But yes, it's a minefield. If you don't know what you're doing and you go into these courtrooms, you'll be decimated, absolutely decimated.
Back to those inalienable rights and the unalienable.
Yes, correct. Now, okay, let's go back to rights and titles. Here's the thing. You cannot sue a living, breathing man or woman using the legal system. It is impossible. Can't be done because there's no link between the living and the legal. The legal only deals in titles, okay? This is where liens come into play, as long as you know how this game works. So if I sue somebody and I say I'm going to go after their house, car, whatever, I'm not suing them, the living. I'm suing their legal persona. Their legal persona is the surname, the Mr. Smith name, the name that is controlled by the UK corporation, the Vatican, and so forth. Yeah. That is the name that the car is registered in. That is the name that the house is registered in. It's not their name. And I know that all those titles are registered. So all those titles belong in the legal system. They're operating in a legal system. It's all commerce. So what I'm going to do is I can apply a lien onto those titles within the legal system. So you can only do that. You can only apply that. So when people say unalienable rights, I go, well, hang on a minute. What rights are you talking about? Because if you start saying Human Rights Act, you've lost the game, because they're not rights at all. They're privileges and allowances. So let's just touch on liberty. A lot of people don't understand what the word liberty means. A lot of people go, give me liberty. No, I don't want liberty. Liberty means privileges and allowances given to you by a higher authority. So that's what it means. So if you're a crewman and you're given some shore leave, you're given liberty. And the liberty bell rings, ding, 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 ding. Okay, you can have a bit of freedom. But when that bell rings again, get back on board ship. So only crewmen, children, slaves get liberty. So it's a big joke played on the American people with the Statue of Liberty. Sorry, Americans. If you're American, sorry. But it only applies to American citizens, legal title, not the living.
Yeah.
So I don't want that. I want freedom. Freedom is a combination of two words, which is free and dominion. Freedom. That's what it means. I am free in my dominion. Everything within my dominion cannot be leaned upon because it's not in the legal system. You can't touch me. So that's where a lordal title comes into play. If you have a lordal title of your house, which, by the way, you cannot get this from the legal system. It cannot be issued to you. You have to create it yourself. You have to claim it. A lordal title means you claim all titles, rights, privileges, licenses thereof. All, everything. There is no third party. There is no higher authority. And there will be a statement on that lordal title. It will say that. And it will give you the name of the living, breathing. So it will be Fred from the House of Smith, if you like, okay? That will be the name. It will be the living name, and it will be a declaration. There's no third party, no higher authority. And it's normally done through an affidavit. So it will be the affidavit of the original person who either claimed the land using staked his claim, or built the house, the original builder. And he's put it in his affidavit saying, I built that house. So that's how you get a lordal title. You've got to claim it yourself. We're trying to educate people on how to do this. We are going to give a little bit of a spin to it. We have the ability to take your documents, your official documents that have got seals, coat of arms, all the rest of it, living name and all the rest of it. We can digitize it and we can put it on the blockchain. I'm just going to show you this. This is something we're working on. Here we go. There you go. It's the first prototype. It's got the Sovereign Project logo on there. And this is a prototype. It says Lamborghini on it, but the idea is, let's say if I buy a Lamborghini and I want to truly claim it, so I will make sure I get the manufacturer statement of origin. I own it now. I'll then create an affidavit saying I claim that Lamborghini, it's mine. I will not register it. Therefore, I don't need a license and I don't need a license plate, and I can now drive on the roads. That's it. And that means ULEZ doesn't apply, speeding ticket, all that goes away, goes in the bin. I can create all that. I can digitize all the documentation, put it on this card, which basically puts it on the blockchain. And then I can take this card. Anyone can read the QR code with a phone, and all the documents come up on the phone. And it's locked in on a blockchain. Therefore, I can sell. So if I wanted to sell this Lamborghini, then I can sell the card along with the car and all the documents. And then the new owner puts his information on the blockchain. You see how it works? Digital, modern technology.
And at the end of the day, the legal documentation we shouldn't use the word legal, should we? But the documentation to prove that you have ownership and everything for that vehicle.
All titles.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it would come to a point where, let's say you get pulled over in the car and the policeman comes, you could literally just hand him that card, he would scan it, see the documentation on there, know that is taking away his legal ability to enforce the law against you, and that would be the end of the matter.
That would be the end of the matter. In fact, what you would have is, where the license plate used to be?
Yeah.
You'd have your notice saying this is private property. Violation of my right to travel results in $250,000 in compensation. And then you'd have your seal on there, okay? So policeman pulls you over. First thing you would do, you say to the policeman is, well, who are you? You don't accept he's a policeman. That's where people go wrong. They see a uniform, think he's a policeman. No, it could be a male stripper on his way to a gig. So you go, who are you? And he goes, I'm a policeman. Okay, identify yourself. Yeah, okay, fantastic, great. Do you need my help? And he goes, no. Are you in danger? No. Oh, why have you stopped me then? Did you see that notice on the back of my car? And you go, yes. You see, you've taken control of the situation. He's answering your questions. And then you'll go, all right, mate, do you want to scan this? And then when you scan this, it logs the time, date, location, the person's phone, everything.
So they
And
can't,
then I'll hand that over to my lawyers, and then they go after the policeman.
they can't deny they haven't seen it.
Can't. They can't. Honestly, powerful stuff. You just got to learn it.
Yeah. We'll wrap this up now, and me and you could probably talk for hours over so many things. But finish on everybody that receives a utility bill, everybody receives an invoice, a bank statement. We're going to go back to the all caps name again that we touched upon before. Is there a way, because they are an all caps name on those invoices, bills, paperwork, whatever we want to call it, that you can actually go onto that, and on the portion at the bottom of the bill where you remit your payment, is there a way to sign that to let them know, because they're using the all caps name, that that bill has already been paid from the trust fund?
Yes, there is. Now, the way it works is normally they would send you a gyro, and you've got to request paper bills if you want to go down this road. Okay, again, you've got to pick your remedy. And what they would do is they would send you a gyro, and you can look this up. The images will come up online. You'll see it. But that basically, and again, you've got to learn how to read. But what they're asking you to do is basically just to fill it out and sign it and just send it back.
Yeah.
But people say, it says on there, on the documentation, it'll say something like, send your check or words to that effect. Now, people think they've got to put a separate check and send that with the gyro slip. That's not what it says. It's saying just send the gyro check back. But people send in another check, so they're sending two checks. So the utility companies are double dipping. So what they're doing is, okay, we've got to try and understand what's actually going on. What they're doing, this is why they call it a statement, because they're saying you've got an account. So they're giving you a clue. Okay, I've got an account. It's a statement. Okay. And you should always challenge that, by the way. So whenever you see documentation that comes through and says your account, you can turn around and say, hang on a minute, I don't remember filling out a membership for my account. When was this account set up? So you can go down that road if you want. But basically what they're saying, they're referring to your account of your foreign situs trust, because you are the creditor. Remember, you've paid for the electricity already, okay? You've paid for all the power lines and all the rest of it, and all that's going on, right? But there's ongoing costs, all right? You've got to pay the workers at the power station. So, by the way, the utility companies, the ones that contact you, they don't sell you gas and electricity. They're selling you debt. That's what they're doing. And if you look at if you look into these companies, you'll find out that they're credit brokers. They'll tell you they're credit in small print, credit brokers. Credit brokers buys and sells debt. So what they're actually doing is the government is using your credit, blah, 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 paying for all the electricity, creates a debt, They sell it to utility companies. The utility companies are basically saying, can we have some credit from your trust fund to pay this debt off? And of course you go, yeah, okay, help yourself, mate. I don't mind. So that's why they send you a gyro check. And you're supposed to find, there is some information, it's on my computer somewhere, I can't quite remember it, but we are going to put it on the Sovereign Wiki eventually.
Those who aren't English,
yeah.
Okay, I just want to point something out. A gyro is gyro bank. And Gyro Bank is the post office bank, and the post office is owned by the Crown, and that's why you've got kings and queens on your stamps.
Bingo. So when you figure it all out, you go, "It's a check, isn't it, from the Gyro Bank?" So you go, "Okay, fine. Help yourself." You just sign it, you send it back, and that's it. That's what you're supposed to do. But no one knows this.
So the very people that are the custodians of your trust fund are sending you the check through just for you to sign and send back and say, thanks very much. There you go. You're now authorized to deduct this from my trust account. And should there be something that I mean, the thing is, we're going to have some poor girl in processing at the electricity company who's going to pull this piece of paper out and look at it and go, There's no check in here. And then
Yeah, no, I know. Now, there is a way of doing it where you would actually put a notice in with it, and you would give instructions, okay? Because what's actually going on, you are the beneficiary and also the executor of your trust fund, right? So executor means you sign off on things, right? So executor basically means signing on behalf of the dead. So obviously if one of your parents dies or whatever, and you're sorting out their estate, you are the executor of your dad's estate or whatever. So executor basically means signing on behalf of someone who's died. And you are signing on behalf of the trust. So you're the beneficiary and you are the executor. Now, the utility companies indirectly are actually operating or taking on the position of the trustee. Now, a trustee has a fiduciary responsibility to put your rights first. I mean, that's what it means. Fiduciary, they have to put your rights first because you're the beneficiary at the end of the day.
yeah.
So they have to follow. So what they're doing as the trustee does not have the right to facilitate your credit. It can't do that. The trustee doesn't have that power. So they're asking you. So they're saying, can we facilitate some credit from your trust fund? And you're signing as executor saying, yes, you can. Help yourself. So that's all that's going on. So if they don't get it right, you will then write a letter to them as the beneficiary and remind them that they are acting as a trustee and they're violating their fiduciary responsibility, and they can end up in serious hot water and violating trust law. And then you say, escalate it to your superiors. Eventually, you'll get someone high up with a name, and then you'll force it through.
Yeah.
You just got to stand your ground.
For those who've used the Bloomberg forensic auditor to access these trust funds, are they does the money always have to stay in the trust fund, or can somebody basically take the whole deposit within the trust fund and put it into a normal bank?
Okay, right, yeah. Now, at the moment, there is a myth that says that if you finally crack this, you will be given a black credit card, unlimited.
Right.
And then you just buy whatever you want. That's the myth. Okay. There's some people out there that said they've got it. We'll see. I'm still out there doing my own search.
I've never seen
never seen one. Never seen one. But it's a myth that's been going around for several years. It's always this mythical black credit card. However, I do know some people who have got very close to, I'm going to use the word facilitate their own credit. That's what they're doing, facilitating their own credit, which, by the way, is what credit card companies do. It's what banks do. It's what insurance companies do. They know how to do it. So they know the correct codes. So we know it's done. We know it can be done. But I've got, here's what we're doing. There's a load of us, and I've got some of the pieces of the puzzle. They've got some of the pieces of the puzzle, and we're chipping it in and saying, what have you got? What have you got? And we're putting it all together. It's this massive jigsaw puzzle. So I'm not there yet. No, I don't know anyone who is, but I do know people who are very, very close. If they get the black credit card, then okay, there you go. It's proved right. But the way it works, and this is what we can figure out, is this trust fund is supposedly set up to cover all of your living bills, everything, place to live, car to drive, food, all of it, for you to live and to live well. That's a big house, and I want 10 cars at least. So
yeah, I'd have a huge barn full of group.
I would, yeah.
Old Group B collectible rally cars. There
Oh, mate, I'd be there. I'd have some of that. Add some of that. Group B, that's fantastic, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we could talk about that all day long. Yeah. But yes, that's what I would do. But what you can't do is you can't use it for business. So you can't use it to invest, and you can't go out and buy businesses and all the rest of it. And it's supposed to be unlimited, but it might be capped at $1 billion. You can't spend a quadrillion. You can't just go, because you won't last very long. Yeah. So you've got to behave yourself.
Yeah. Now I get a lot of people, because we have a lot of people that watch the show. We have a lot of people that message, and you probably get a lot of people that message you. And one of the continuing things that I'm seeing a lot of lately, and until we had this conversation, and maybe this might be connected, I thought this was a scam, and I thought it was just a way to entrap people into a financial thing that didn't exist. But I did do the due diligence of looking at the history of it and seeing where this went back to and where it is currently. And this is something called Nazara and Jazara, and the quantum financial system that's being touted as the replacement. Now, could this that people are saying that, there's all this gold and all this wealth that belongs to the people. Is it possible that Nazara or Jazar or whatever they call it is the trust fund that exists for the people created from the birth certificate?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about this, the quantum banking system. Not too much. I don't know a great deal about it. It's possible. I mean, it is true that the Vatican holds vast amounts of gold. I mean,
Oh,
they don't even hide it, So, and we know all corporate countries now hold quite a lot of gold as well. So, gold, the golden rule: he who holds the gold makes the rules. So it's possible. It's a little bit like there's a lot of stuff in the truth movement that isn't true. All right, it's juicy stuff, and until I get some evidence that I can actually say, yeah, then I don't go any further down that rabbit hole, if that makes sense. Yeah, I normally cut it off.
that's exactly where I am with this
Yeah,
because I've spoken to the financial experts and they're saying, nope, nothing like that exists. Um, so really, again, to me, it looks like we spoke of earlier, that people that want to be saved, people that want to have that glimmer of hope to get out of this fucking insane asylum that we live in, are looking to be rescued by a financial system that very likely might not exist.
doesn't exist. I mean, I hear other things saying that, oh, we're going to go back on a gold standard. No, we're not. That's never going to happen. Okay. So, a lot of people are saying, another one is debt jubilee. Oh, all the debts in the world are going to get wiped out. No, they're not. Not
Because
going to happen.
it's your enslavement tool. They don't want people to have freedom.
No, they've worked so hard for at least 68 years to get rid of gold anyway, and to get everyone levered up on debt anyway. They can't, and by the way, they can't get rid of the debt. If they actually did get rid of the debt, it destroys the currencies and the bonds collapse, and that's the end of all governments. So they
Yeah.
can't do that. They are going to do something though. They're going to move all this debt over into. I think the way they're doing it is they're going to do a crypto SDR. I think that's what they're going to do, and I think the SDR is going to be a basket of countries' currencies.
Yeah.
There's going to be a GLD component, and there's going to be some sort of crypto Bitcoin component in there as well. It's going to be thrown into the big basket, and that will be an SDR, and that'll be the crypto SDR.
Yeah.
Um,
For those people who are watching right now, an SDR is what they call a special drawing right. And this is what countries that are in will apply to the Bank of International Settlements. Now, the Bank of International Settlements is the central bank over all central banks around the world that allows these special drawing rights for countries. So, yeah, I just wanted to, so people are sitting there going, what's SDR? But at the end of the day as well, what I am seeing is the BRICS nations, predominantly China, Russia, and India, who are amassing massive amounts of gold and massive amounts of silver, which did make me think that there would have been a possibility that within a power grab system, should the central bank digital currency fail, that they are putting in basically a protection mechanism for them to emerge with a possible currency that could actually be backed by something. But it's more likely that once they get into this digital system, that this digital system will be something that will continue, whether the crypto side of that will be backed by gold to make it authentic and for it to actually have value it remains to be seen. But it's certainly, at the moment in time that these countries within the BRICS nations are strategically positioning themselves for it. as well as with commodities, we're seeing Saudi Arabia right now, who have left the agreement that they had for the petrodollar. They're still kind of working with it, though. It's not been
Oh
complete.
yeah.
But they have shown massive interest for joining the BRICS nations. And then the becoming part of the BRICS nation, funnily enough, the Bank of International Settlements have said to Saudi Arabia that they should be prepared then to adopt the central bank digital currency of China. And it looks like this power hub may spring from that area, backed by many countries who are holding gold, silver, and oil reserves and huge commodities, for them to undermine the countries which have been operating under a fiat currency system. But it certainly looks that regardless of the power struggle that we're seeing around the world, that it is still controlled by one central power hub. And I do
It
believe
is.
that is the very people that own the central banks and have always owned the central banks and have always told kings and queens what to do and loaned money. And this is them achieving their new world order, in effect.
It is. That's right. I think what they're doing is they're loading up most of this debt onto the American dollar. Okay. So I'm pretty sure what's going the dollar's coming to an end. I think everyone agrees
Yeah.
that's done. So anyone holding dollars is going to get wiped out. They're going to be absolutely decimated. And all countries holding dollars are going to send them back.
Mhm.
And you're going to see the destruction of America. And unfortunately, that will bring down currencies that are pegged to the dollar through
Yeah.
Bretton Woods, the
Canada.
pound, Canada. Yeah, you know, you know it.
Yeah.
So they're all going to get dragged down. Now, I know a lot of people saying that the new currency is going to be backed by, but I don't think it's going to be backed by, but it's going to be pegged to gold. There's a difference. So if something is backed by it, it means you can exchange it for the gold. So if this was actually backed by, say in the olden days, that was five. Yeah, I'd hand it over at the bank and I'd get me silver. Now, pegged to is different. So pegged to is like a derivative. So that means it derives its value from something else, but it isn't the something else. So being pegged to just means that the value of the currency will be pegged to the value of gold. So I think that's what's going to happen with the SWIFT system, which is changing over. But it's still a SWIFT system, by the way, but they're going to basically turn it into some form of digital crypto system, and it's going to be run by the Chinese government, I'm assuming, or the Russian government, one of the two. It's all moving over.
It's going to be a look
Yeah,
at where it's going to go. It's going to be a one world bank, a one world government, a one world military, and they've even just recently set up the church of a one world religion to control people. But with the pegging of things,
yes,
with the mark of the beast, or people taking a digital ID or a barcode or whatever it is to identify themselves. And we know that they're going to float this, as they have with the birth certificates, to the stock exchange. What if the global currency system is pegged to each individual's trust fund?
that's what I think is going to happen. Absolutely correct. I mean, this is by the way, this is how the value of each currency is valued already. So it's the pound. So this is how it works. So you go, okay, then, how does this pound have actual value? I know it is pegged to the dollar, but it does fluctuate. So you go, where does it get its value from? Well, it gets it from the British citizens.
Yeah.
Legal title. And the British citizens have the birth certificate, and each birth certificate is tied to their trust fund, $100 million or whatever. So you add all that up, 68 million trust funds. That's basically the value of this.
Yeah.
So that's how they do it.
Anyway,
Yes.
we talk for hours here, and there's so much more we could touch on.
There's tons.
But I'll put a link in for people to find you. But could you tell people, because YouTube doesn't sometimes allow me to put the web address in, but
Okay.
where can people find you and start learning about how to become sovereign?
Yes. We have a website, which is thesovereignproject.live. Now, on there is contact emails. There's links to all our social media, because we're on Facebook, Instagram, all the rest of it. We're on all of that. We do have a small YouTube channel we just set up with some easy to understand videos. So that's the Sovereign Project. In fact, it's called the Real Sovereign Project on YouTube, because there is some scammers out there. There's some pretend Sovereign Project websites. Be careful, because they're charging for membership and we don't. So yeah. In fact, the Sovereign Project does not charge upfront. We don't charge membership, and we do not charge for the information. The information is free download. So if someone's charging you for documents, it's not us. You're being scammed. But yes, that's how you can get in contact. And there's a link. There's a page on my website, and there's a whole link with a whole load of podcasts that I've already done. And you can binge watch that if you want.
All I can say to those who are watching this right now, that's you out there, you watching right now. If you educate yourself with this information, you will become empowered, and the more people around you that you can encourage to educate themselves with such information means that we're going to create a far greater future for humanity. And it's up to you right now. We've done our part. We've just done this interview and talked about this. It's up to you. And sharing something like this is going to pique somebody's interest, and it's going to allow them to feel the urge to educate themselves and empower themselves. So right now, I've just put the power in your hands to the future of humanity. No pressure, but all you got to do is share this video and this interview, get it out there, and let's get people educated. And together we can stand shoulder to shoulder against the tyrannical governments that we've had to live under their regime for so long. I know the world is heading towards a better place. It might get worse before it gets better. But as long as we're left standing, and as long as we are sovereign at the end of this, we can make a huge difference. Get out there and do it, people. If there's one thing you achieve in life, make this your legacy. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much again, Pete. This has been incredible.
Thank you very much.
And I'll chat to you when we finish this. But as we always say here on the Atlantic Underground podcast, believe nothing and question everything. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye now.